Gyrfalcon's Hauberk is already one of the best hunter exotics on Void, but with the new exotic shotgun Slayer's Fang, it's taken to a whole nother level. You get massive AoE with the volatile rounds because of the ricochets, shrapnel shots from Slayer's Fang, and then you also get weakened so that your enemies take even more damage, and you can activate your Gyrfalcon loop even easier, and you have a backup way to activate it if you somehow break it. On top of this, the catalyst for the shotgun can give you Repulsor Brace, which will give you Void Overshield every time you kill a Void debuffed enemy, which is all the time, so that you are extremely tanky. You get Devour from your subclass, and then we get Void Breaches to trigger Devour even more, so we have tons of sources of healing, we have lots of damage, and lots of survivability. It really does it all. You can't really go too wrong here, and you have some really solid supers on Void. If that sounds good to you, you might enjoy this build. Just gonna pop the super here. Let's get into it. I'm Engineer. Just like my last video, I want to talk about Slayer's Fang first, just in case you're not aware of it. Slayer's Fang is our new exotic shotgun that launched with Act 3 of episode Revenant. It is a slug shotgun, so it is very good at precision hits, but the cool thing about it is when it hits enemies, it breaks into shrapnel rounds that will then ricochet and try and seek those enemies. On top of it, after you get a kill, you get Nightsworn Sight, and that will also inflict weaken on all those enemies hit by the set munitions, which is fantastic. In addition, another way to get that Nightsworn Sight is to pick up a Void Breach, which is pretty easy to do on Void because we are getting them from both weaken kills and volatile kills. You get a lot of volatile kills. You also have a few catalyst perk options. You have Repulsor Brace, Stats for All, Cascade Point, and Loose Change. All those are great, but Repulsor Brace is just the obvious winner to me. It's more survivability. Void Overshields were buffed this episode to have 70% damage resistance, which is just crazy. So having a constant source of that on top of everything is just really great. The biggest weakness of this weapon is the ammo economy. It's going to run through ammo really fast. It does not have a lot of reserves, so you need to constantly be thinking about the ammo and just making sure you have some way to get it back. As for your other weapons, use Void Heavy. I like machine guns on Gyrfalcons because you can inflict volatile on a lot of enemies very quickly, and they also hit pretty well and they're pretty versatile, but whatever works for you, just make sure you do a Void Heavy because the entire build kind of hinges on using Void. I mentioned this earlier, but our exotic is Gyrfalcon's Hauberk. This was launched back in the year of Witch Queen, and it is one of the coolest exotics for Void because when you leave Void Invisibility, you get volatile rounds for 9 seconds. There's also some other stuff here about doing finishers while affected by invisibility. That isn't too bad because we will be doing finishers. We'll talk about that later. But the main thing here is just easy access to volatile rounds. You get it every time we go invisible, and we can do that off of anytime we're killing a debuffed enemy. We can get it off of dodging. Really straightforward. As I mentioned, this was an exotic from Witch Queen, so you need to own Witch Queen to get it, and they can use Rahul's Novel Decryption or Vex Strike Force. As for your stat priorities, you want resilience, you want mobility to get into invisible even more often. Strength is another way to get invisibility pretty often, just because you can inflict the weaken of the snare bomb and then kill that enemy. And then discipline's actually lower in this one, and then recovery, which we're going to compensate for with Devour, and then intellect's last. Moving over to the aspects and abilities, our first aspect is Stylish Executioner, which will turn us invisible when we kill a Void debuffed enemy, which happens a lot. The one thing to mind here is that you cannot reactivate this for 2 seconds after you activated it, so you get a 2 stylish cooldown that you can see in your buff bar, so just keep that in mind. If you manage to just wait out the 2 seconds each time, you can actually just infinitely stay invisible with this build because you're going to pretty consistently kill with Slayer's Fang, and you will constantly re-trigger those buffs thanks to the volatile, the weaken. It's great. There's also some other stuff about buffing melees, but that's not too relevant to this build. Now for our second aspect, we take Vanishing Step because this gives you a dodge that turns you invisible. And that's just a really great way to get into invisibility. One thing to note here, the invisibility from Stylish Executioner is 8 seconds normally, up to 11 seconds if you have Echo of Persistence, whereas the invisibility from Vanishing Step is 5 seconds normally, going up to 7 seconds with Persistence. So keep that in mind if you need to be invisible for a while. Now, on the super, it's pretty flexible. I like Mobius Quiver, Shadow Shot. Spectral Blades is the only one I don't recommend here. It's just not good, so don't recommend that. Your grenade's pretty flexible. I was playing around with magnetic grenade and scatter grenade a bit, but I tended to self-damage myself too much because you're playing so close to enemies. So in this case, I might recommend Void Spike or Wall. It's really just some extra damage in there, just kind of controlling enemies, so not a huge deal. Your melee Snare Bomb, because that's your only option. And your class ability, I like Gambler's Dodge because it gives you a way to get your melee back pretty quick, and that's another way to get into your stylish loop because you throw the Snare Bomb, weaken an enemy, kill them, and you can go to town without having to waste a few shotgun shots. Moving over to Fragments. The first fragment we want to take is Echo of Starvation, which will give us Devour when we pick up a Void Breach or an Orb, and that's just incredibly invaluable because it's constant healing every time you get kills and it's a grenade energy back. I really recommend Echo of Persistence because in this build we have Invisibility, Devour, and Void Overshield, so getting more duration on all those is just fantastic. Echo of Harvest is going to give us an Orb and a Void Breach every time we kill a weakened enemy, which happens a lot thanks to Slayer's Fang. So that's fantastic. And then Echo of Cessation gives us one more source of Void Breaches as we kill volatile enemies, which we do quite often. And another thing too, it will also make enemies volatile when you do a finisher, which we'll be doing for ammo a good bit. Some other fragments to think about: Echo of Reprisal will give you super energy as you kill enemies while surrounded by enemies, and we're in shotgun range, so it happens quite a lot. Echo of Obscurity is another way to get into invisibility, just to be careful. Once again, we're doing those finishers, so having another way to get into that, but generally I find if I'm finishing an enemy, I'm already going invisible, so not super needed. One thing to note, one of the best things about Slayer's Fang is that it gives us an easy source of weaken. Normally, we want to take Echo of Undermining, which is the grenade's weaken fragment, but it gives you minus 20 discipline, which is just a huge stat penalty and really hurts builds. Moving over to mods and armor stats. The mod setup, if you saw my last video, it's pretty similar to that. The biggest thing here is we need Special Finisher. That's our easiest way to consistently get ammo back. Ammo finders usually sound good, but if you're using a special weapon and you're trying to get special ammo back, you're going to require like 50 kills to get a special ammo finder brick, and those aren't even that good. Finisher is a much better option, but we also want void weapon surges because we're so weapon focused. So what we do is we take Special Finisher, and then for the void weapon surges, we take Time Dilation. On our legs, we're going to take stacks on stacks, so every orb will give us 2 armor charges, and then we take Charged Up on the chest so that we can have 4 armor charges. So 2 orbs will get us maxed out. Special Finisher takes 3 armor charges, so even if we use it when we're maxed out, we will still have 1 left. Time Dilation makes them last for 15 seconds, so just very easy to keep this going, never lose armor charge, and still be able to do a finisher almost anytime you want. Outside of that, you want to do some stuff to buff your weapons. I've actually got a harmonic targeting on this build, which felt a little bit weird at first, but I found to be really nice because this is a slug shotgun and you can actually get those crits. Harmonic siphon, so you make orbs that way. It's good to have firepower, so you have another source of orbs there. We generally want to bring back our dodge ability as much as possible, and we're going to be dodging a lot, so Reaper also is another great source of orbs. Moving over to stats, mentioned this earlier, we want resilience for damage, we want mobility or strength to melee and start the Gyrfalcon loop, and then we just want to get as much discipline as we can get. Recovery you ideally want to boost, but we just don't have the stats for it, especially with some of the fragment penalties we have, so just at least get to 30, and same thing for strength and intellect. We just want to keep those to at least 30. Void has a lot of stat penalties, so it's just a little bit hard to work around. Briefly just highlighting the artifact perks, these will only be valid for a little over 3 weeks as of this video, so generally the ones boxed in purple here are all void related. Take those because it's a void build and you'll activate them a lot. Everything is about making void breaches, collecting them, getting Devour, things like that. The 2 that are circled in green here are Thick of It, which gives armor charge while surrounded by enemies and getting kills, and Curative Orbs, which will drop an orb every time you break a shield. Both of these are very good, they're great general use, and they actually fit the build very well. Now, just another gameplay demonstration. This is, once again, the opening of Tomb of Elders. This is normal, but this is an encounter that's geared for a full team. I'm doing it solo. It's a lot of enemies, not a lot of cover, so it's a good demonstration. You can already see here, Gyrfalcon loop just going strong. One thing that I really want to emphasize with this is a lot of times on this want to just like go, 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 shoot, shoot, shoot. But because you can go invisible and it completely breaks the aggro of enemies, take your time, line up your shots. Get those headshots with your slug shotgun. Make sure the ricochets are going to hit something. Make sure there's a good wall behind the enemy that you're shooting. It's going to clear enemies pretty well, so just take your time. And generally taking your time is going to be better because it's going to let that cooldown on stylish executioner lapse so that you could just keep going back into invisibility, take even less damage. This is probably my least favorite faction to fight in this encounter. It's random which one you get, but this is Taken Enemies and Dread, which is really just a buttload of Grims. And I hate them. A lot of times if I see this, I will just restart it because I hate fighting them so much. But this build just utterly clowns on them. You're invisible most of the time, so they can't fight you. And when you do come out, it's just volatile explosions, and it clears out the bats real quick. Actually managed to juke one of the bat screams, which I'm pretty proud of. You can see here too, we're actually getting our super back pretty fast. We've just been a little bit over a minute, and we're mostly using a weapon. One thing to note, getting enemies finishable is kind of hard with the shotgun because it actually hits so hard that it will just generally kill everything. So you might need to carry a good primary, maybe like an auto or scout or just something that hand cannons I find tend to be pretty rough because they overkill everything. One thing to note, because Void Breaches and Orbs activate Devour, they actually also heal you. So if you see one and you're low on health, just grab that healing. I didn't go into it too much in the artifact perks, but the very bottom right one is a new one. I don't remember the name exactly, but it creates a Void Portal that throws attacks out of it, and it's just really cool. It doesn't do the best damage, but it's just free extra damage if you collect Void Breaches and use Void Weapons, so pretty much win-win there. You can see here I've just pretty much chunked down most of this boss's health with a few shotgun shots to the face. Still got a whole bunch of enemies here. Just take out a few of them. Use that grenade. Once again, grenade's pretty flexible, but Void Spike's surprisingly good. And then you can always use your heavy. Heavy weapons are still great. Just finish off this last bat, and that's pretty much all we've got. So just to go over that gameplay loop and kind of wrap this up, dodge for your invisibility at the start of the fight. That will get you ready for your Volatile from Gyrfalcon. Take your time, line up your shots, wait out that 2 stylish cooldown, and then try and collect a Void Breach when you can, and just get those shotgun kills. Either one of those is going to activate Nightsworn Sight, and then you will begin the weakening, you'll begin the ricochets. The Volatile from Gyrfalcon will also hit on all those ricochet shots, and it should just be everything getting wiped out. Anytime you can and you have more than 3 armor charges, use a special finisher. You want to just proactively do that because you're only going to get about 7 shots off of each one of those. So you want to just keep doing it, just keep your topped off so you don't completely run out, because it's a really fun build as long as you have ammo. And with that, that's pretty much it. I hope you're enjoying this build. I expect to also have a Titan build shortly, and then probably a few more builds before Heresy launches. Hopefully we start hearing more soon, and then we can start planning for that. Feel free to let me know what you think in the comments. I've had a lot of fun with this build. It's maybe my favorite of the Slayer's Fang builds so far, and they're all really great. The shotgun is just way more impressive than I thought it was. When they first showed it on the reveal stream, I was like, that doesn't sound that interesting, but it's turned out to be a lot more fun than I expected. And a lot of it's because shotguns were buffed so much this episode for PvE. With that, I'll let you go. I hope to catch you in the next one. And once again, appreciate all the views, all the subscriptions. Nice to see the channel growing. And one last thing too, I do have a Discord if you ever want to talk about builds or see what I'm working on. I usually will just talk about it there. It's pretty great. And it also has all my guides and resources all compiled in that one place. So definitely check it out. With that, I'll let you go. Thanks.